Today, we're going to look into the mysterious and heartbreaking case of Toyah Cordingley. Toya Jade Cordingly was raised along Australia's northeastern coast in the Cairns suburb of Warree. Toya's parents had separated when she was young. Her dad, Troy, was remarried to Mary, and her mum, Vanessa, to Darren, with whom she had 2 children, Jack and Lena. Toya was a free-spirited, kind person who loved life. She worked at Bar Street Pharmacy and Health Foods in Earlville. She had been dating Marco Heidenreich for 2 years, but like Marco, her real passion in life was animals. Toya had worked at the Paws and Claws Refuge in Port Douglas. Counsellor Michael Kerr, her boss, described her as one of the most beautiful souls. She had something special with animals. Even the troubled dogs would calm down in her presence. Even after leaving Paws and Claws, Toya remained involved with animal rescue, as well as looking after her 2 dogs, which she loved walking, particularly on the various beaches nearby. Toya's last ever social media post included a picture on a beach that read, "No matter how talented, rich or intelligent you are, how you treat animals tells me all I need to know about you." At 12 p.m. on Sunday, October 21st, 2018, Toya Cordingly went shopping at Rusty's Markets in downtown Cairns. This CCTV footage is the last time she was seen alive. She then went home to change her clothes before driving out to Wagnetti Beach, around 38 kilometres north of Cairns. Between 2 and 2:30, Miss Cordingley arrived at Wagnetti Beach and parked. She took her boyfriend's dog Indy for a walk on the sand and was never seen alive again. By 10:50 p.m, she'd been out of contact for many hours, and after she didn't return home, Marco and her family reported her missing. After making a few calls, they headed out in the pitch black. They searched as best as they could with small torches until 5:30 a.m. And as the sun began to rise, the scene unfolded. First came the discovery of Toya's vehicle, a blue 2009 Mitsubishi Lancer with the number plate TOY 146, which was found parked near the southern entrance to the beach. Next, Vanessa located Toya's dog Indy, who was tied up so tight she couldn't even lay down. Her mother's heart sank. She knew that Toya wouldn't have done that. The dog didn't bark at all, which was strange. Then, at 7:45 a.m, October 22nd, Miss Cordingley's father Troy found her body in a shallow grave in the sand dunes, 800 meters from her car, when he saw a foot sticking out of the sand. While investigators have never specified the cause of death, Toya, whose body was found naked and without any of her belongings, had sustained visible, violent injuries before her death. The autopsy listed in very graphic detail the injuries, so much so that the parents were advised not to read it, but they felt they needed to know, and it left them reeling in horror. The tragic loss of Toya Cordingley's life sent shockwaves throughout the region. It was later reported that Toya's father Troy had to be carried away from the crime scene. Months later, breaking his silence about the tragedy, Troy would write on Facebook, "Toya is my only child. Finding her body has burnt an indelible image in my mind. It's something a father should never have to suffer." The investigation into Toya's murder was led by Queensland Police, who were aided by the State Emergency Services early on, as they began a thorough examination of the crime scene, shutting down Wagnetti Beach for several days. More than 100 people contributed to the official search, carefully combing through every inch of the beach and using boats and drones to search the entire area. Authorities also used forensic dogs and divers to scour the water for Toya's possessions, including her phone, wallet, keys, and items of clothing, which were all missing. While a police spokesperson would later admit that bits and pieces had been found, it remains unknown what had been recovered. Hundreds of people from the region attended Toya's funeral in Cairns the following week, with more than 400 people packing themselves into a 300-seat chapel, which had been decorated with balloons and sunflowers, Toya's favourites. In attendance was Toya's boyfriend Marco, who brought Indy and expressed his eternal love for Toya, as did family members and other loved ones. This was expressed most poignantly by her uncle, who told the audience, "Today is not a day to be angry. Today is not a day to hate. Her life was cut short, but was full of love. Police conducted a door-to-door canvass of the area, taking DNA swabs on a volunteer basis to eliminate potential suspects through forensic testing, indicating that the killer may have left behind physical evidence. Officials announced that they were treating the murder of Toya Cordingly as a sexually related murder. One detective made the comment that the injuries were more consistent with the attack being personal, not random. However, all of Troy, Marco, and all those close to the victim had been cleared. Within 3 weeks, as part of the investigation, the police had received over 800 phone calls, and the public had volunteered photos, videos, and dashcam footage. Eventually, police officials put out a request for any dashcam footage from along the Captain Cook Highway recorded between noon and 7 p.m. on the day of the murder. Detective Inspector Sonia Smith also told reporters they were keen to speak to any females who've been approached by any males, either acting inappropriately, aggressively, or making them feel uncomfortable in the last 12 months to 2 years in any beach or secluded area nearby. Queensland police officials stated they had received hundreds of tips from people in the region, with reports of sexual indecency along the beach as well as other deviant behaviour that included drug abuse. Investigators remained very tight-lipped about potential suspects or persons of interest in this case, but 6 months after the murder, they had narrowed down their investigation to a single suspect, tracked using video footage and phone GPS data, and possibly DNA evidence. The suspect in question, who had been in Cairns on the day of Toya's murder and seems to have fled Australia a day later, was 38-year-old Rajwinder Singh, who lived and worked as a nurse in a town 40 kilometres south of Cairns called Innisfail. Mr. Singh was an Indian national who had moved to Queensland with his family years before Toya's murder. Singh was a respected husband and father of 3, who worked as a geriatric nurse at a hospital in Innisfail. He and Ms. Cordingley did not know one another. Information leaked to the press in December of 2018 described that Rajwinder Singh had started to exhibit strange behaviours, including depression and withdrawal in the lead-up to Toya's murder. He had become troubled by his work. He'd disappear from home for days, spending long hours at secluded beaches, and he'd largely stopped speaking. According to multiple articles, police had identified the nurse's car driving erratically in security pictures from traffic and dashcams, in the same location as Toya's mobile phone was triangulated to. Witnesses would reportedly come forward and describe Singh acting suspiciously in the hours after Toya's murder, and he was seen covered with mysterious scratches and bite marks that evening. Family members of Rajwinder Singh reported that he had left town on the date of Toya's murder. Earlier that day, he had visited Cairns before frantically returning and purchasing a plane ticket. From there, he flew to Sydney that evening, spending the next several hours with his sister before boarding a flight headed towards his home province of Amritsar, India. He left behind him his wife, children, one of which was a newborn, and other family members, and has not contacted them since, nor has he used any of his debit or credit cards. According to some reports, this circumstantial evidence was only compounded by potential forensic evidence, although we have no knowledge of what that evidence is to this day. Police urged those in the region to remain cautious and refuted the allegations that Rajwinder Singh was being singled out and he was only being wanted for questioning. Detectives insisted there were several persons of interest being actively investigated and that they had not narrowed in on any one individual. Rajwinder's brother-in-law, Harpreet, said Raj is not capable of murder. He's too quiet, too afraid. He was under a lot of tension from his work, but police told us they have no evidence that Raj killed her, but that he is a person of interest. After a police task force raided the family home in Innisfail, cordoning it off as a crime scene and seizing personal items, Rajwinder's father flew to India in a bid to bring his son back to Queensland. Following on reports that he was now living in Anupgarh, a remote village along the Indian-Pakistani border, Rajwinder's father was unable to track him down, although he did provide a DNA sample to police for them to match against DNA samples found at the murder scene. In November of 2019, just over a year after Toya's murder, Indian authorities told reporters that they had not received a formal extradition request. Without this, the authorities could not begin searching for Singh, who it was now believed had taken shelter in a Sikh temple. It was also reported that months prior, Queensland Police had finalised a brief recommending Singh's arrest. Toya's family was growing increasingly frustrated with the speed of the investigation, which over 2 years later had yielded very little. This lack of progress led to speculation that Mr. Singh may not actually be the culprit. According to some sources, the murder was a revenge crime. In this theory, Toya's stepfather, Snake, was an ex-bike gang member, and the crime was a message to him. Her body was found naked and mutilated. The theory states that Rajwinder's scratches reportedly seen on him could have been from her dog. As the dog was so large, it seems unlikely that one man could have tied Indy up. This theory postulates that Raj saw Indy, tried to free the dog, which is how he became a person of interest and how police found his DNA, but that he was then seen by the gang members and thus was a witness and fled out of fear. Having his family's life threatened, it's understandable why he would have been seen driving erratically and booked a sudden last-minute ticket out. Someone wanting to escape wouldn't necessarily take their wife and 3 kids. Of course, these are all from anonymous sources and police have not commented on these matters, but it does raise some interesting questions. This is only one of many theories, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. It wasn't until the 19th of March 2021, roughly 2.5 years after Toya's murder, that the Australian Attorney General confirmed that he had signed the extradition order to bring Rajwinder Singh back to Australia for questioning. The order does not mean that Mr. Singh is guilty of murder, nor that the Indian government have to immediately send him back to Australia, but it was seen as a major step forward in getting justice for Miss Cordingley and her family. Unfortunately, it seems like Toya's loved ones are now stuck again. In May 2022, it was confirmed by the Attorney General's Department that the Indian government back in March 2021 had come to a halt to allow the authorities to make further location inquiries, and that it was now a matter for the Indian authorities to progress the request. Hopefully, this will be completed and carried out any day now. But until then, the truth of Toya Cordingley's fate will remain a mystery.